The Galactic Council chamber was the largest room Yuna had ever seen. It stretched so far that the walls disappeared into shadow, and the ceiling rose so high that clouds of mist gathered near the top. 73 alien species sat in floating platforms arranged in a massive circle. And at the center of that circle stood a single podium made of black stone. That was where Yuna stood now. Alone, representing all 8 billion humans on Earth. She had been Earth's ambassador for 7 years. She had learned to smile when alien diplomats insulted her species. She had learned to bow when ancient beings looked at humanity like they were insects. She had learned to stay quiet when the Council made decisions about human affairs without asking humans what they wanted. But today was different. Today, there was no more pretending. The Arbiter floated down from the highest platform. He was a creature that looked like a giant insect, with 6 arms and eyes that glowed pale blue. His species had served as judges for the Council for over 5,000 years. They were supposed to be fair. They were supposed to be neutral. Yuna knew better now. The species designation, human, the Arbiter announced. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. The charges are as follows. First, technological aggression. Second, unauthorized development of quantum-fold weaponry. Third, refusal to submit research archives to Council oversight. Yuna kept her face calm, but her heart was beating fast. She had known this was coming. Earth's intelligence service had warned her 3 days ago. The Council had already decided the verdict before this trial even started. The evidence has been reviewed by the High Council. The Arbiter continued. The defense arguments have been considered. They had given Yuna exactly 15 minutes to defend her entire species. 15 minutes to explain why humanity deserved to exist as a free civilization. The Arbiter had spent 4 hours reading the charges. The verdict, by unanimous decision of the Galactic Council. Yuna touched the small communication device hidden in her ear. Back on Earth, Fleet Admiral Taiwu was listening. So was President Park. So was every human being who had access to a broadcast signal. They had kept this trial secret from the public for weeks, but Yuna had made sure the final verdict would be heard by everyone. Guilty. The chamber exploded with sounds. Clicking mandibles. Deep rumbling roars. High-pitched whistles. It was how aliens applauded. Yuna had heard it before at celebrations and ceremonies. Now she was hearing it at her own execution. The Arbiter raised 2 of his arms for silence. The sentence is as follows. First, immediate surrender of all human military vessels. Second, technological regression to pre-space flight status. Third, permanent occupation of the Sol system by Council peacekeepers. Yuna felt something cold settle in her stomach. Technological regression. That meant they wanted humanity to forget how to build spaceships. They wanted humans to stay on Earth forever, watched by alien guards, never again reaching for the stars. The sentence will be carried out within 30 standard days, the Arbiter said. The human delegation will now acknowledge the judgment and prepare their species for transition. This was the moment. Yuna looked up at the 73 species watching her. Some of them looked bored. Some of them looked satisfied. A few of them, from the younger species, looked almost sorry. None of them had spoken in humanity's defense. Not one. Ambassador Yuna, the Arbiter said. You may respond. Yuna took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking, but she forced them to be still. She thought about her grandmother, who had survived the floods that destroyed Old Sol. She thought about her father, who had helped build the first human colony on Mars. She thought about every human being who had ever looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. I have a message from Earth, Yuna said. Her voice was steady. Admiral Taiwu, are you receiving? Static crackled in her ear. Then Taiwu's voice came through, calm and cold as ice. We're receiving, Ambassador. The whole planet is listening. Then let them hear this. Yuna looked directly at the Arbiter. Humanity rejects this verdict. The chamber went silent. Complete, absolute silence. Yuna could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. You cannot reject a council verdict, the Arbiter said. His voice was confused. There is no procedure for rejection. Then we're creating one. Yuna stood straighter. The Galactic Council has existed for 12,000 years. Humanity joined 40 years ago. In that time, we have followed your laws. We have paid your taxes. We have bowed to your ancient traditions. And in return, you have treated us like children, like pets, like prisoners who should be grateful for their cages. Some of the alien delegates were stirring now, murmuring to each other. Yuna ignored them. You accuse us of developing quantum-fold technology without permission. You're right. We did. Do you know why? Because your laws say that only council-approved species can research faster than light travel. Do you know which species are approved? Only the ones who have been council members for more than 1,000 years. Only the ones who already have the technology. She pointed at the floating platforms around her. You wrote laws to keep young species weak. You call it peace. You call it order. But it's just control. It's just fear. You're afraid that if humans learn to travel the stars freely, we might not need you anymore. This is unprecedented, the Arbiter sputtered. You will be silent. No. Yuna's voice rang through the chamber. For 40 years, we were silent. We were polite. We were good little newcomers who knew their place. And where did it get us? Standing here, being sentenced to extinction. She touched her earpiece again. Admiral, they want to take our ships. I heard, Taiwu replied. Every human on Earth could hear him too. What do you want to do, Ambassador? Yuna smiled. It was not a friendly smile. I want to go home. Then come home. We'll be waiting. Yuna looked at the Arbiter one last time. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. We do not recognize your authority. We do not accept your verdict. And we do not surrender. She stepped down from the podium and began walking toward the exit. Behind her, the chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates were shouting. Some were calling for guards. The Arbiter was making sounds that her translator couldn't process. You cannot do this, someone screamed. No species has ever defied the Council. Yuna paused at the door. She turned to look at the 73 species who had just tried to destroy her world. Then we'll be the first, she said. She walked out of the chamber and did not look back. On Earth, 8 billion people watched her leave. They watched their ambassador walk alone through alien corridors, surrounded by enemies, refusing to be afraid. They watched her board the small diplomatic shuttle that would carry her home. And they understood, all of them at once, that nothing would ever be the same. The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. They had crushed rebellions. They had absorbed empires. They had never of civilizations that humans could not even name, but they had never faced a species that simply said no. Admiral Taiwu stood on the command deck of the carrier Defiance, watching Yuna's shuttle rise from the council station. Around him, officers were rushing to battle stations. Communication screens were lighting up with emergency signals from every human outpost in the solar system. Sir, his aide said, the Council is already mobilizing their peacekeeper fleet. We're estimating 4,000 warships. They'll reach Earth in approximately 6 days. Taiwu nodded slowly. Then we have 6 days to change history. He looked out at the stars, and for the first time in his long military career, he felt something he hadn't expected. Hope. Not because they would win. The odds were impossible. But because, for the first time, humanity was fighting for itself. Not asking for permission, not begging for acceptance, not just standing up and saying, "We are here. And we are free." Whatever happened next, that would never change. Commander Junho had been a soldier for 20 years, but he had never seen anything like this. The enemy fleet hung in space like a wall of stars. 4,000 warships gathered from 12 different species, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a city. They stretched across the darkness in a line so long that Junho could not see where it ended. Their shields glowed soft blue in the void. Their weapons were already powered and ready. The human fleet was 260 ships. Junho stood on the bridge of the Defiance, the largest carrier humanity had ever built. Around him, young officers worked at their stations with steady hands and pale faces. They knew the numbers. They had seen the enemy fleet on their screens. And they had not run away. That, Junho thought, was something to be proud of. "Commander," Lieutenant Sujin said from her tactical station, "the Peacekeeper fleet has taken position at the outer edge of the system. They're blocking all exit routes." "Show me." The main screen flickered and displayed a map of the solar system. Earth was a small blue dot at the center. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, all the places where humans had built colonies and stations, were marked in green. And surrounding everything, like a net closing around a fish, was a ring of red dots. 4,000 red dots. "They outnumber us 15 to 1, Sujin said. Her voice was calm, but Junho could see her hands trembling slightly. "Their shields are rated 3 times stronger than ours. Their weapons have longer range. Their ships are faster. What about experience?" Junho asked. Sujin paused. "Sir? Experience. Combat experience. When was the last time the Council fought an actual war?" Sujin checked her data. "Over 2,000 years ago, sir. Against a species called the Vorn. The Vorn lost. 2,000 years." Junho walked to the center of the bridge and looked at his crew. 2,000 years since they fired a weapon in anger. 2,000 years since they lost soldiers. 2,000 years since they faced an enemy who wasn't already defeated before the fight began. He pointed at the wall of red dots on the screen. "They have more ships, better technology, ancient wisdom, but they have forgotten what war actually feels like. They think this will be easy. They think we'll surrender when we see their fleet. They think humans will break." A young officer at the communications station, Junho remembered his name was Dohan, looked up with wide eyes. "Will we break, sir?" Junho smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a wolf. "Son, let me tell you something about humans. We invented war. We've been killing each other for 10,000 years. We built weapons to destroy cities when we only had horses and swords. We split the atom and used it to burn 100,000 people in a single flash of light. We are very, very good at violence." He turned back to the screen. "These aliens look at us and see children. They see a species that's only been in space for a few centuries. They think that makes us weak. But they don't understand we didn't come to space to find peace. We came because we conquered everything on Earth and needed new challenges." The crew was staring at him now. Junho could see fire in their eyes. Fear was still there, but something stronger was growing. "Admiral Taiwu has a plan," Junho continued. "I don't know all the details. None of us do. But I know this. We are not going to surrender. We are not going to die quietly. And when this is over, the galaxy will remember that humanity does not bow." Sujin's console beeped. "Sir, the enemy fleet is moving. The first wave is crossing into human-controlled space." Junho returned to his command chair. "All ships, battle positions. We fight at the rings of Saturn." The human fleet moved like a school of fish, smooth and coordinated. 260 ships against 4,000. It should have been a joke. It should have been suicide, but Jinho had chosen the battlefield. Carefully, Saturn's rings were beautiful from a distance, billions of ice chunks and rocks spinning around the giant planet in perfect bands of white and gray. But up close, they were chaos. The ice chunks ranged from tiny pebbles to mountains. The rocks tumbled and collided constantly. Sensors went crazy in the electromagnetic static. Targeting computers couldn't lock onto anything for more than a few seconds. For the Council fleet, trained in clean battles and precise formations, the rings would be a nightmare. For humans, who had trained in the asteroids and learned to fight dirty, the rings were home. Enemy wave approaching, Sujin announced. 300 ships. They're coming in a standard arrow formation. Perfect. Jinho opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, scatter pattern Omega. Draw them into the rings. Make them chase us. The human ships broke apart and dove into the chaos of Saturn's rings. Behind them, the Council ships followed, still in their pretty arrow formation, still flying like they were on parade. They didn't stay pretty for long. The first Council ship hit an ice chunk the size of a building. Its shields flickered and held, but the ship was knocked off course and slammed into two of its neighbors. The formation broke. Ships scattered, trying to avoid the spinning rocks. And suddenly they weren't hunters anymore. They were targets. Now, Jinho said calmly, all ships, engage. Human ships burst from hiding spots in the ice. They fired and moved, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. The Council ships tried to return fire, but their sensors were screaming. Their formations were chaos, and the humans were everywhere and nowhere at once. The first Council ship exploded in a ball of orange flame. Then another. Then 3 more. 5 confirmed kills, Sujin reported. Her voice was rising with excitement. They're retreating. The first wave is pulling back. Cheers erupted on the bridge. Jinho let them celebrate for exactly 5 seconds. Then he raised his hand for silence. We won a small battle, he said. The war has just started. They'll learn from this. They'll adapt. And they'll come back with more ships. He was right. The second wave came 4 hours later. This time, the Council sent 500 ships, and they came slowly, carefully, picking their way through the rings instead of charging. The battle lasted 6 hours. Humanity lost 12 ships. The Council lost 30. It wasn't enough. By the third wave, the Council stopped caring about losses. They sent 1,000 ships straight through the rings, accepting the damage, pushing forward with pure numbers. Human ships ran out of missiles. Human pilots made mistakes. Human crews died. The retreat started at hour 18. Jinho watched his fleet fall back toward Jupiter. Behind them, Saturn burned. The stations around the rings were gone. The colonies on Titan had been evacuated just in time. And the enemy was still coming? Casualties? He asked quietly. Sujin's voice was hollow now. We've lost 60% of the fleet. 156 ships destroyed. 42,000 confirmed dead. 42,000. Jinho closed his eyes for a moment. He knew some of those people. He had trained with some of them. He had eaten dinner with them and laughed at their jokes. Now they were dead, and the enemy was still coming. The orbital stations around Jupiter are evacuating, Dohan reported. They're asking how much time we can give them. Jinho looked at the tactical display. The Council fleet was slower now, more careful, but they were still advancing. At this rate, they would reach Jupiter in 8 hours. Mars in 16. Earth in 24. Tell them we'll hold as long as we can, Jinho said. But even as he said it, he knew the truth. They couldn't hold. Not against 4,000 ships. Not against 12,000 years of technology. All they could do was fight and die, and hope that somehow, somewhere, someone had a miracle ready. On Earth, Admiral Taiwo was watching the same battle on his screens. His face was calm, but his hands were clenched tight around the arms of his chair. "Sir," his aide said, "Dr. Minji is on the line from Titan." Taiwo picked up the communication device. "Doctor, please tell me you have good news." There was static on the line. Then Minji's voice came through, tired but excited. "Admiral, it's ready. The quantum fold network is complete. We just finished the final calibrations." Taiwo closed his eyes. For the first time in 18 hours, he allowed himself to breathe. "How many ships can we move?" "All of them," Minji said. "Every single enemy ship in the system. We can scatter them across the galaxy in one moment." "And our ships?" "Safe. The network is programmed to target only non-human vessels." Taiwo opened his eyes. Through the window of his command center, he could see Earth hanging in the darkness. Blue and green and beautiful. Still alive. Still free. "Activate the network on my command," he said. "And Doctor, thank you." He cut the connection and sent a message to Commander Jinho. "Hold for 6 more hours. Then the war changes." Dr. Minji had not slept in 3 days. She sat in a small metal chair in a bunker, buried deep beneath the frozen surface of Titan, Saturn's largest moon. Around her, machines hummed and blinked with lights she barely understood. Screens showed numbers and equations that would make most scientists cry. And in the center of the room, a device the size of a car pulsed with soft blue light. This was the quantum fold generator. This was humanity's secret. This was either going to save the world or tear. A hole in reality that would destroy everything. Minji was trying not to think about the second possibility. "Doctor," her assistant Yunji said from a nearby console, "the fleet is asking for an update. They're down to 40 ships. 40 ships. 3 days ago, humanity had 260. Minji felt sick. Those weren't just numbers. Those were people, pilots and engineers and soldiers who had died fighting an enemy they could never beat unless Minji's machine worked. "Tell them we're almost ready," she said. Her voice was rough from talking too much and drinking too much coffee. 20 more minutes. She turned back to her screens and checked the calculations for the 100th time. The quantum fold network was based on a simple idea. Space was not a flat surface. It was more like a blanket that could be folded and twisted. If you knew how to fold it right, you could move something from one point to another instantly, without traveling the distance in between. The Council had discovered this technology 8,000 years ago. They used it to build their trade routes and their empire. They also made it illegal for any young species to research it, claiming it was too dangerous. They were right. It was dangerous. Minji had seen what happened when the early experiments went wrong. She had watched the test ship get folded in half. Its crew scattered across 3 different star systems in pieces. But she had also seen what happened when it went right. Minji, activate satellites 1 through 12. Start the synchronization sequence. Across the solar system, 12 small satellites woke up. They had been disguised as weather monitors for 10 years, floating quietly in orbits around Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Nobody had paid attention to them. Nobody had questioned their purpose. Now they began to hum with power, connecting to each other in a web of invisible energy that wrapped around the entire solar system like a spider silk. Synchronization at 60%, Unji reported. 70, 80. Minji's heart was pounding. This was the moment. 20 years of secret research. Thousands of scientists working in hidden labs. Billions of dollars spent on equipment that had to be smuggled past council inspectors. All of it came down to the next few minutes. 90%. 95. The bunker shook. Somewhere above them, The battle was getting closer. The Council fleet was pushing through the last human defenses, heading straight for Earth. They had no idea what was waiting for them. 100%. Network is fully synchronized. Minji picked up her communication device. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. Admiral Taiwu, the Quantum Fold network is ready. On your command. There was a pause. Then Taiwu's voice came through, calm and clear. All human ships, pull back to minimum safe distance. Repeat, all ships pull back immediately. On the screens, Minji watched the remaining human ships turn and run. It looked like retreat. It looked like surrender. The Council fleet roared forward, sensing victory, chasing the fleeing humans like predators chasing prey. They had no idea they were running into a trap. Doctor, Taiwu said, activate the network. Minji pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. The screen showed the same thing, 4,000 enemy ships closing in on Earth. The human fleet scattered and broken, defeat seconds away. Then space folded. There was no sound. There was no explosion. There was just a ripple in reality, like a stone dropped in still water, spreading outward from the 12 satellites in all directions. The ripple touched the first Council ship, and the ship simply vanished. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Just gone. Then the next ship vanished. And the next. And the next. The ripple spread across the entire solar system in less than 3 seconds. It touched every Council ship, wrapped around them like invisible fingers, and pulled them away. Across the galaxy, in 12 different star systems, 4,000 warships suddenly appeared out of nowhere, scattered, confused, alone. One moment, Earth was surrounded by enemies. The next moment, the sky was empty. Minji stared at her screens. She couldn't believe it. She had done the math 1,000 times, but seeing it actually work was something else entirely. The entire Council fleet, the most powerful military force in the galaxy, had been scattered across 400 light-years of space in the blink of an eye. It worked, she whispered. It actually worked. Yunji was crying. Other scientists in the bunker were hugging each other. Someone was laughing, a slightly crazy sound that echoed off the metal walls. On the communication channel, Taiwu's voice was quiet. Doctor, I need confirmation. Are they gone? Minji checked her readings 3 times. Yes, Admiral. Every enemy ship has been transported out of the solar system. They're scattered across 12 different locations, each one at least 30 light-years from the nearest Council base. It will take them months to regroup. And our ships? Untouched. The network was programmed to target only non-human vessels. Our fleet is safe. There was a long silence. Then Taiwu spoke again, and his voice cracked slightly. Well done, Doctor. You just saved humanity. Minji leaned back in her chair and let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Through the bunker's small window, she could see the orange glow of Titan's atmosphere. Somewhere up there, the stars were shining the same as always. But everything had changed. Humanity had done the impossible. They had taken the Council's own technology, the technology they had forbidden anyone else to have, and used it to defeat the greatest fleet in history. Without firing a single shot, without losing a single ship, the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. On the bridge of the Defiance, Commander Jinho was staring at his empty tactical display. One moment, red dots had filled the screen. The next moment, they were gone. Lieutenant Sujin, he said slowly. Am I seeing this correctly? Sujin was running her hands over her console, checking every sensor, every reading. Yes, sir. The enemy fleet has vanished. All 4,000 ships. There. They're not anywhere in the solar system. Where did they go? Everywhere. We're picking up quantum fold signatures, pointing to at least 12 different star systems. They've been scattered across the galaxy, sir. Jinho sat down heavily in his command chair. His legs felt weak. He had been prepared to die. He had been prepared to fight until his ship was destroyed and his crew was dead. He had not been prepared to win. "Get me Admiral Taiwu," he said. Taiwu's face appeared on the screen. The old admiral was smiling, a rare expression on his weathered face. "Commander, how are your people?" "Alive, sir. Thanks to whatever just happened." That was Dr. Minji's work. 20 years of research, hidden from the council, waiting for the right moment. Taiwu's smile faded slightly. "We knew this day would come. We knew the council would never truly accept us. So we prepared." Jinho nodded slowly. "What happens now?" Now we have time. The council fleet is scattered. Their ships will take months to return to their bases. And when they do, they'll have to explain to their governments how they lost an entire invasion force without humanity firing a single shot. "They'll come back," Jinho said. "Angrier than before." "Yes, but we'll be ready. And more importantly, the galaxy will be watching." Taiwu's eyes were bright with something that looked almost like joy. "We just proved that the council isn't invincible. We just proved that their laws can be broken. Do you know how many species have wanted to see that for thousands of years?" Jinho thought about it. The council ruled through fear of their fleets, fear of their technology, fear of their ancient power. But fear only worked as long as people believed the power was absolute. Humanity had just proven it wasn't. "We're going to have a lot of visitors soon," Jinho said. "Yes," Taiwu agreed. "We are, and this time we'll be the ones setting the terms." On Earth, billions of people were watching the news. They had seen the trial. They had watched their ambassador walk out of the council chamber. They had followed the desperate battle at Saturn's rings, counting ships and holding their breath. Now they were seeing empty space where an invasion fleet had been done in cities and towns across the planet. People were coming out of their homes. They were looking up at the sky. Some were crying. Some were cheering. Some were simply standing in silence, unable to believe what had happened. They had been told they were weak. They had been told they were young. They had been told they could never stand against the ancient powers of the galaxy. And today, they had proven everyone wrong. A new age was beginning. Humanity didn't know yet what it would look like. They didn't know what challenges were coming or what enemies they would face. But they knew one thing for certain: they would face it standing up. The message traveled at the speed of light, bouncing from relay station to relay station across the galaxy. Within 1 week, every inhabited world had received it. Within 2 weeks, every species had seen it. And within a month, the galaxy was talking about nothing else. Ambassador Yuna stood on the steps of the United Earth Parliament in New Seoul. Behind her, the city stretched toward the sky towers of glass and steel reaching up like fingers trying to touch the clouds. Above the city, ships moved silently through the air, carrying people and cargo to destinations across the planet. And beyond the atmosphere, where the stars waited, humanity's fleet patrolled in silent readiness. Yuna looked directly into the camera. Her face was calm. Her voice was clear. She was not speaking to the council. She was speaking to everyone else. "For 40 years, we were told to be grateful," she began. "Grateful that older species tolerated our existence. Grateful that we were allowed to travel their shipping lanes, trade in their markets, breathe their recycled air on their stations. We were told that this was a gift. We were told that we should say thank you and never ask for more." She paused, letting the words settle. "We did say thank you. For 40 years. And in return, the Galactic Council decided to destroy us. Not because we attacked anyone. Not because we broke treaties or murdered innocents. They decided to destroy us because we dared to learn. Because we dared to grow. Because we refused to stay small and weak forever. Across the galaxy, billions of beings were watching. Some were council members, safe on their ancient worlds, convinced that humanity's rebellion would soon be crushed. Some were younger species trapped in the same system humanity had just escaped, wondering if what they were seeing was real. The council calls our independence a crime, Yuna continued. They say we violated their laws by developing technology without permission. But let me ask you this, whose laws? Laws written by species who already had everything. Laws designed to make sure no one else could catch up. Laws that exist not to protect the galaxy, but to protect the powerful. On the planet Vezin, a world of purple forests and silver seas, a young being named Dara watched the broadcast in secret. His species, the Vezinari, had been council members for 200 years. In that time, they had learned to obey. They had learned to bow. They had learned that the price of peace was silence. But Dara had never liked silence. We are not criminals, Yuna said. We are pioneers. We looked at the rules that said we must stay weak, and we said no. We looked at the walls that said we must stay small, and we climbed over them. And when the council sent their greatest fleet to punish us, we sent them home. Dara's heart was beating fast. He had never heard anyone speak like this. Not to the council. Not in public. Not without being arrested or killed. To the council, we say this. We do not want war. We never wanted war. We wanted only to be free to explore, to learn, to grow at our own pace. You forced us to fight. You forced us to defend ourselves. And now you will have to live with the consequences. Yuna's eyes seemed to look directly at Dara, even though she was speaking from a planet he had never seen. To the rest of the galaxy, to the species who have watched in silence, who have wondered if there might be another way, we say this. You are not alone. Earth stands independent. And our door is open. The broadcast ended. Dara sat in the darkness of his room, thinking about everything he had just heard. For 200 years, his species had been part of the council. They had followed the rules. They had stayed small. And what had it gotten them? A seat at a table where they had no voice. A role in a system that would never let them rise. He thought about his grandfather, who had dreamed of building ships that could travel to other galaxies. The council had denied the research permit. Too dangerous, they said. Too ambitious. His grandfather had died without ever seeing his dreams come true. Dara made a decision. 1 month later, a small Vezinari ship appeared at the edge of the Sol system. It carried no weapons. Its shields were down. It broadcast a single message on repeat. We come in peace. We wish to talk. Ambassador Yuna met them personally at the docking station above Earth. The Vezinari delegation was 3 beings, Dara and 2 of his friends. All young, all nervous, all looking around with wide eyes at the human ships that surrounded them. You came a long way, Yuna said with a small smile. The council must not be happy about this. Dara's translator device converted her words into sounds he could understand. The council doesn't know we're here. Not yet. We left without permission. That's brave. That's necessary. Dara straightened, trying to look more confident than he felt. Your broadcast reached our world. Many of us watched it. Most were afraid. But some of us heard something we had never heard before. What was that? Hope. Yuna nodded slowly. She understood. She had felt the same thing when she first realized that humanity wasn't going to surrender. That moment when fear transformed into something stronger. What do you want, Dara? To learn, he said. To see what freedom looks like. And maybe, if we're lucky, to bring it back to our own people. Yuna thought about it for a long moment. Taking in refugees from council species could be seen as an act of war. It could make humanity's situation even more dangerous. There were 100 reasons to say no, But there was one reason to say yes that outweighed all of them. It was the right thing to do. "Welcome to Earth," she said. Over the next year, more ships came. Not many at first, just small groups, individuals and families who had seen humanity's broadcast and decided to risk everything. They came from species that had been council members for centuries. They came from species that had never been allowed to join. They came from worlds that had been conquered and worlds that had simply been ignored. Each one had a different story. But they all had one thing in common. They were tired of being told what they couldn't do. Admiral Taiwu watched the new arrivals from his office in the orbital command center. He was older now, his hair completely white, his body slowing down with age. But his mind was still sharp, and he understood what was happening. "We're becoming something," he said to Commander Jinho, who had come to deliver a report. "Something the galaxy has never seen before." Jinho nodded. "A threat? No." Taiwu shook his head. "A choice. For 12,000 years, the Council has been the only option. If you wanted to travel between stars, you had to follow their rules. If you wanted to trade with other species, you had to pay their fees. If you wanted to exist in this galaxy, you had to bow to their power." He gestured at the window, where a dozen different kinds of ships floated peacefully beside human vessels. "Now there's another option. That's what scares them. Not our weapons, not our technology. The fact that other species might look at us and think, maybe we can be free too." Jinho studied the ships outside. "The Council won't let this continue. They'll attack again. Eventually, yes. But every month that passes, we grow stronger. More species contact us. More allies join our side. And the Council has to explain to their own people why they can't defeat a species that's only been in space for a few centuries." Taiwu smiled, and there was something dangerous in his expression. "Empires don't fall because of one big battle, Commander. They fall because people stop believing in them. And right now, across the galaxy, beings are starting to wonder if the Council really knows what's best." On the planet Vessen, Dara's message had finally arrived home. He had sent it secretly, using human communication technology that the Council couldn't intercept. In it, he described Earth, the cities, the people, the freedom that ordinary humans had to speak and think and dream without asking permission. He described the research centers where scientists from 5 different species worked together on projects the Council had forbidden. He described the debates in the Parliament, where representatives argued openly about the future. He described the simple fact that no one had asked him to bow or to stay silent or to know his place. "We don't have to live this way," Dara's message said. "There is another path. We can take it if we're brave enough." On Vessen, the message was passed from person to person, copied and shared in secret. The government tried to suppress it. The Council tried to jam the signals. But ideas are harder to kill than people, and this idea was spreading. Freedom was contagious, and across the galaxy, the old order was beginning to crack. 5 years had passed since the verdict. The Grand Hall of Earth's new interstellar parliament was not as large as the Council chamber. It did not have floating platforms or holographic decorations or clouds of mist gathering near the ceiling. It was a simple room built of stone and glass, with seats arranged in a circle around a central stage. But the beings gathered here were anything but simple. 31 species sat in those seats. Some had scales that shimmered in the light. Some had wings folded against their backs. Some were made of crystal, their thoughts flickering as colored lights inside their transparent bodies. Some looked almost human, with minor differences, extra fingers, different eyes, skin in shades of blue or gold. They had come from across the galaxy. Some had been council members who had left. Some had been rejected from the council centuries ago. Some had been conquered and controlled for so long that they had forgotten what freedom felt like. Now they were here. Together, building something new. Ambassador Yuna, now Secretary General of the Human Alliance, stood at her seat, watching the delegates arrive. 5 years ago, she had walked out of the council chamber alone, representing a species that the galaxy thought was doomed. Now she led a coalition that was changing history. It still amazed her sometimes. Admiral Taiwu was the first to speak. He walked slowly to the central stage, leaning on a cane. His hair was completely white now, and his face was lined with age. But his eyes were bright, and his voice was strong. "When I was young," he began, "I believed humanity's destiny was to prove ourselves worthy of the galaxy's approval. I spent my whole career trying to show the Council that we could follow their rules, respect their traditions, fit into their system. I thought that was how we would succeed." He paused, looking around at the assembled delegates. I was wrong. The hall was silent. Every being was listening. "Our destiny was never to be approved," Taiwu continued. "It was to build something worth joining. Not an empire, not a council of the powerful, but a coalition of the willing species who believe that diversity is strength, that freedom is sacred, and that no one gets to decide another's limits." He gestured at the delegates around him. "Look at what we have built. 31 species working together as equals. No hierarchy. No ancient traditions that say some voices matter more than others. Just a simple agreement. We will stand together, and we will be free together." Dr. Minji stepped forward to join him. She was older too, her hair streaked with gray, but she still had the same intensity in her eyes. The quantum fold network she had created was now being used to connect alliance worlds, making trade and communication faster than anything the Council had ever built. "The old Council still exists," Minji said. "They still command most of the galaxy's military power. They still call us criminals, rebels, children playing with forces we don't understand." She smiled. "But every year, their numbers shrink. Every year, more species look at Earth and see not a threat, but a possibility. Every year, the galaxy becomes a little less about control and a little more about choice." Commander Jinho, now Fleet Marshal of the Alliance military, was next. He stood straight and proud, his uniform covered with medals from battles he would rather forget. "We thought they would attack again immediately," he said. "We spent the first year waiting for the invasion fleet, preparing for a war we expected to lose. But the war didn't come. Do you know why?" He looked at the alien delegates, and they looked back with curiosity. "Because they were afraid. Not of our weapons. The Council still has more ships, more technology, more soldiers than we could ever match. They were afraid of what would happen if they attacked and failed again. They were afraid of what their own people would think. They were afraid of the idea we represented." Jinho's voice rose with passion. "The Council rules through fear. Fear of their fleets. Fear of their laws. Fear of being different. But fear only works if people believe it. And every day that we exist, every day that we grow stronger, more beings in the galaxy start to wonder, maybe I don't have to be afraid anymore." He stepped back, and Yuna took the stage. She looked at the delegates, beings from 31 different worlds, species that had never worked together before, cultures that had nothing in common except a desire to be free. She thought about everything that had happened in the last 5 years. The battles, the negotiations, the moments of fear and hope and wonder. "The Council declared Earth guilty," she said. "They sentenced us to extinction. They told us to forget how to reach the stars and accept that our place was on one small planet at the edge of the galaxy." Her voice was calm, but it carried to every corner of the hall. "We said no. We declared our independence. And in doing so, we discovered something the older species had forgotten." She paused, and the silence was absolute. "The universe doesn't belong to those who arrived first. It doesn't belong to those with the biggest fleets, or the oldest traditions, or the most ancient claims. It belongs to those brave enough to reach for it. It belongs to those willing to dream of something better. She raised her hand toward the window. Outside, the sky was filled with ships, human ships, visionary ships, crystal ships, ships of a dozen designs from a dozen worlds. They floated together in the darkness, a fleet that had grown from nothing to something that could change history. "Welcome to the new galaxy," Yuna said. "We're just getting started." The delegates rose to their feet. The applause started slowly at first, then grew louder and louder until it filled the hall like thunder. Beings who had never met before were cheering together. Species that had been enemies for centuries were standing side by side. It wasn't perfect. There would be arguments and disagreements and problems that seemed impossible to solve. The council was still out there, still powerful, still dangerous. The future was uncertain, but for this moment, in this room, something beautiful was happening. Dara stood among the Vecinary delegation, tears streaming down his face. 2 years ago, he had left his home planet as a fugitive. Now he was watching his people take their place in a new alliance. His grandfather would have been proud. Outside the Parliament building, humans were gathering to watch the ceremony. Children sat on their parents' shoulders, pointing at the alien ships in the sky. Old people who remembered the days before first contact shook, their heads in wonder at how much had changed. Somewhere in the crowd, a young girl looked up at the stars and made a wish. She wished that one day she could travel to those distant lights and see what was waiting there. She wished that the universe would welcome her, not as a subject or a prisoner or a child who needed permission. Just as herself. And in the new galaxy that humanity was helping to build, that wish might actually come true. Fleet Marshal Jinho found Admiral Taiwu after the ceremony. The old man was sitting alone in a quiet room, looking out at the earth below. "You should be celebrating," Jinho said. Taiwu smiled. "I'm too old for celebrations. But I wanted to see this before I go." "Go where?" "Retirement, finally." Taiwu turned to look at Jinho. "I spent my whole life preparing for war, building ships, training soldiers, waiting for the enemy to come. I don't think I'm needed anymore." Jinho sat down beside him. "What will you do?" "Watch," Taiwu said simply. "Watch what you all build. Watch the children who will grow up in a galaxy where humanity stands proud. Watch the species who will join us, and the ones who will become our friends." He looked out at the stars again. "I spent so many years being afraid. Afraid of the council. Afraid of failure. Afraid that everything we did would be for nothing. But now," he smiled, and for a moment, he looked like a young man again. "Now I'm just grateful. Grateful that I lived to see this. Grateful that I get to leave the galaxy a little better than I found it." Jinho was silent for a long moment. Then he placed his hand on Taiwu's shoulder. "Thank you," he said, "for everything." "Don't thank me," Taiwu replied. "Thank the humans who refused to give up. Thank the scientists who worked in secret. Thank the soldiers who died fighting for freedom. Thank everyone who looked at the impossible and said, 'Let's try anyway.'" He closed his eyes. "That's what makes us human, you know. Not our technology, not our weapons. Just that one stubborn quality, the refusal to accept limits, even when everyone tells us we should." Outside, the stars were shining. The fleet was patrolling. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, new worlds were waiting to be discovered. The old era was ending. A new one was beginning. And humanity would be there to see it through.